make of the ongoing saga with automatic data processing, the nation's largest payroll processor that also provides cloud-based human capital management software? It's tussling with Pershing Square, the big hedge fund run by notorious, or some could say famous activist, Bill Ackman. Last week, Ackman presented a 168-page presentation about how ADP is underperforming. He outlined the steps the company could take to turn itself around. Then this morning, we learned that ADP's board of directors had unanimously voted against the 3 board members nominated by Pershing Square, which, by the way, owns 8% of the company. The general consensus among the analysts who follow the stock is that while most of Ackman's points make some sense, many are actually being worked on right now. The whole thing has gotten a little more than contentious. I think Ackman raises a number of points that do need a rebuttal because they seem pretty serious, and if addressed properly, maybe some of them could lead to a higher stock price. Although other accusations amount to what some would call violations of SEC disclosure rules, and I think those have had a deleterious impact on the stock itself. Why do I say that? Because the stock's been falling ever since the presentation came out. So what the heck is going on here? Let's take a closer look with Carlos Rodriguez. He's the president and CEO of Automatic Data Processing. Hear more about how his company's doing and how this tussle with Bill Ackman's unfolding. Mr. Rodriguez, welcome to Mad Money. Good to see you, sir. Have a seat, Carlos.
Appreciate it.
Well, first of all, I am, as I should fully disclose, I'm an Automatic Data customer. Use them at Bar San Miguel, and I checked with my manager just this weekend. We've had 3 years. And it's been terrific relations. So I put that out so that someone says, hey, listen, you do work with them, we do indeed. Now, one thing, I've got the presentation, and it took a little while to read, and I spent most of yesterday doing it. But the one thing that's clear is that Mr. Ackman spent a lot of time on the actual presentation. Wouldn't it be good to have someone like that on the board helping you reach better decisions?
Well, he definitely put in a tremendous amount of effort and a lot of research into the company. I think he did come to some wrong conclusions. I think one of the things that I would have, appreciated was the opportunity to have a discussion about some of the conclusions that he reached and some of the data he used to come to those conclusions.
Well, then let's understand that this was sprung on you then. He did not have a back and forth about many of the 176 pages worth of things that he feels you're not doing right.
No, that was the first time we saw the presentation. It was the same time you saw the presentation.
Okay. So then, therefore, when he talks about the underperformance that you concealed, he says, and you overstated your growth and the client count is misleading and commentary on client loss is misleading. Had you sat down with him, you think he would have reached different conclusions about those charges?
I think so. As an example, one of the things that I think was a central thesis to his presentation was that our sales results were overstated, which, as you just mentioned, around SEC disclosure, et cetera, we kind of take offense to the implication that we are, playing with numbers or not disclosing information that we should be disclosing. But as an example, on our new business bookings number, apparently they've come to the conclusion that we somehow are including the pass-throughs of our PEO business in the bookings results, which is not accurate. And there's a couple of other examples.
Professional, different PEO.
Correct. It's one of our lines of business. Right. I think other examples are they were using a client count number from, I think it was 2009, from a presentation in our upmarket business, which included some of our standalone clients. So we have a core HCM payroll business, and then we also
capital
have
management, right?
And we also have these standalone clients, like we do taxes for some companies, even though we don't do payroll. Anyway, long story short, in 2009, whoever made that presentation, which was before my tenure, included those clients also in the total number. And the number that he's comparing it to today is not the same number. So our client count has not gone down from 5,000 to 2,500. In fact, it's about slightly up to modestly up, depending on your perspective. And then if I can, one more.
Sure, no, absolutely.
I appreciate the opportunity to clear the record here. There was also a comment about Salesforce productivity.
Yes.
And again, I think if we had the opportunity to have a conversation and explain kind of what the source of the data was, where they got the information from, we could have clarified that it was wrong.
So the head count up 50%, sales up 50%. In other words, the numbers basically imply that the head count you added, it didn't produce any productivity. That is not the case?
That is not correct. So our sales grew from the time I started as CEO through fiscal year 16 at 10% compounded annually. In 17, as you know, we had an issue because we had a grow over with ACA.
Right.
But throughout that entire time, our sales headcount growth has been half, on a compounded basis, half of the growth of sales. Hence, we have achieved productivity.
Okay, I mean, I do feel, in full disclosure again, I mean, your stock has been terrific under you, so I feel like in some ways,
Thank you.
I'm asking you to defend your life against something where there are 400 other people that could be sitting in the seat who probably have much more reason to have to sit in the seat to answer these things. But I think it's an interesting and important discussion because he does want board seats. He does own 8% of the company. Shouldn't that put him in the room, so to speak?
Well, if I can comment on the performance for a minute, because I think it is, I believe in the quote-unquote the system, and our economic system, and our country's system. And it is a little troubling because I think sometimes the people in this seat, their stock has been underperforming for 5 to 7 years, and I think they deserve to be in the hot seat. And then it feels now like if you do perform, you're in the hot seat, and if you don't perform, you're in the hot seat.
In your numbers versus the S&P?
Up 200%. S&P is somewhere around 80 to 90% over the same period. And if I can add, because I think it's public information, Pershing Square's up, I think it was 22% before fees and 7% after fees. Now, I'm not sure how it's possible to have that much in fees to have your return go down by that much, but that's what the published letter is from Pershing Square.
Right, so we'll have to get his comment on that, but that's obvious that your performance
Well, it's his letter, so
okay.
I'm assuming that it's...
Well, I don't have that, so I got... Now...
I have it for you.
Okay, well... I trust you. I mean, it is more contentious than what I'm used to on the show, let's put it that way. Okay, so we've had Paychex on a number of times, and we've had Workday on a number of times. Workday's growing at 38%. Now, it's a smaller company, but is that a comparison where I could say that Workday's growing so much more rapidly than you? Why aren't you a cloud-based company growing as rapidly as they are?
Well, listen, it's a fair question. I think it's a successful company. We happen to partner with Workday in addition to competing with Workday. So in many cases, their human capital management software, which is cloud-based, in addition to the rest of their ERP suite, which includes financials, is something that we actually work with in terms of we provide our payroll and other standalone services as part of a solution that a client might buy with Workday. So we actually have a very good relationship with Workday. They're a good company, and as you said, the performance is undoubtedly very good.
Okay, Paychex, we've had Marty Mucci on, every quarter. His margins are north of 40%. Yours are much less than that. Should you not have the same margins that he has?
Well, we're slightly different companies in terms of the makeup of the company. We have an international business that Paychex doesn't have. We also have an upmarket business, which tends to have structurally lower margins. Okay. And we also have BPO businesses that have structurally lower margins, but they're all still great businesses because they're very low capital intensity and very, very good returns. Having said that, I have to say that, again, you picked another good company because Paychex is, I think, a great competitor.
Now, do you have the same 40, they're on small and mid-size mostly, Marty always talks about that. Do you have similar margins of 40% on your small to mid-size?
Very close. We have made a tremendous amount of progress in the last 5 years on our down market business. Okay. That's kind of the first business where we built an entire cloud-based versionless software system that we then migrated all of our clients onto. Today we have over 500,000 clients on what we call Run in the down market. That's really like freed up enormous resources, which have translated into not just happier clients and better client retention, but also very good higher margins and better margins than we had 5 years ago.
Okay, so if you have 40% on that, wouldn't that presume that therefore your larger business would have 11,
If I can just clarify, I didn't say 40% because we don't segment reporting.
Right. I mean, that's one of the problems I found is that there's a lot of things that read apples to apples in the report, but it sounds like from what I'm hearing from you, the apples to apples may be a little less clear than what the report says.
Well, I think you really have to kind of get down to the details as you have to roll up your sleeves and kind of look at what's really behind the numbers. So as an example, there were comparisons in the presentation to us and other companies who exclude their stock compensation, which we don't. Right. There are other companies that
Therefore, those earnings would look greater than they should be if they use that kind of term.
Correct. And other things like start using an EBITDA comparison rather than what we publish as our margin is really an EBIT number.
Right. Okay, so there's David Faber interviewed you, and he said that that basically Ackman said your company's insular and that there hasn't been a new amount of a lot of change. Then I look at the proxy statement; it does seem like those people have been there a lot. And at the same time, you called Ackman a spoiled brat, which I understand because he shocked you with this stuff. But I'm always trying to figure out, well, is the charge that you're insular correct? And is he a spoiled brat? And what did he do, given that he owns 8%, to merit that name?
Well, as you can imagine, I would say that we don't deserve the name insular. As an example, one of the things that was talked about in the presentation was how insular our technology organization was, and 20% of our technology engineers are less than a year into the company. So we've been refreshing our engineering talent. In fact, 50% of the engineering talent is less than 5 years with the company. As to the senior leadership team, I think if you had other people in this seat from large companies, I think you'd see a similar picture, which is a team that's relatively new to me in the sense that I didn't inherit the same team that is in place now, but who rose up through the company. I think that's fairly typical in a company. Right. We have lots of talent that we bring in from the outside. In fact, 25% of what we call the senior executives of the company last year that were hired into positions were hired from the outside. So we are bringing in talent from the outside. We're refreshing the company, and I'm incredibly proud of the organization, and I don't think we're insular at all.
All right, one last question. Had there been another way to approach? Had Mr. Ackman called you and said, look, we want to work with you, we have a big position, maybe one day we could have a board seat, and he gave a reasonable presentation, would that ever come to pass, that he might have had a board seat? Or that he wouldn't fight, you wouldn't fight it, and it wouldn't have to be a proxy fight?
Well, just to be clear, I'm not fighting anything. The board of directors
Board of directors, I'm sorry, you're absolutely right, the you as well. But would the board of directors, you think otherwise if it had been done in a better manner, or a manner that maybe people would find more reasonable?
Despite what you might think, we're professionals and we don't take things personally. So I think the manner is less important than the facts. And I think the facts, speak for themselves. The performance that we have versus Pershing Square, the ideas which have been brought up, which are not new to us and not new to the board of directors or to the management team. So I think it's a deeper issue than the manner and the form in which it was presented. But it was an odd way to approach a company. In fact, I had a conversation with Bill right before we I guess agreed to disagree that he was going to launch a proxy contest. And I asked him, Bill, why can't you, I know you have a vacation, which is what's getting in the way and why you need to have an extension of this deadline. But when you get back from vacation, why can't we meet then? Or the week after that or 2 weeks after that? And he did mention that he wasn't ready yet with his presentation. But I said, well, when you're ready, we'll meet, whether it's late August, September. And he said, I'm afraid that's not going to work because that's not the way my business works. I have to have the leverage over the threat of launching a proxy contest in order to get you guys to agree to the things that I want to do with the company.
Right.
And again, I just add that I'm hoping he's an 8% shareholder because, as you know, I'm not sure if it's to conceal what the transactions were, but there were derivatives that were used, stock options and forward contracts. And I'm hoping that at this point, now that he doesn't need to conceal his position anymore, that he's converted his ownership into true stock ownership and not just a leveraged position using stock options.
All right, well, what we'll do is we'll get his responses to this. I mean, I hate to play ping pong, but you were very fair to answer what I thought were a synopsis of the questions he asked, and I really appreciate you coming on, sir. And I always say you are what your record says you are, and you have trounced the S&P.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, that's Carlos Rodriguez. He's the president and CEO of Automatic Data Processing, ADP. Mad Money is back after the break. Booyah! Jim Cramer here from Mad Money. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube. Click here to subscribe and get the jump on my exclusives with CEOs, plus market news, investing advice, and a whole lot more.